What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you to a brand new Let's Play of one of my favorite games of the year, actually. A surprise indie, I wouldn't call it necessarily a hit or sensation, but very interesting title nonetheless that totally caught me by surprise.
You were a weapon, a bringer of death, and now you're nothing. I will keep on killing you, again and again. I am your future, an eternity of slow, painful deaths.
I hear thunder, pitter patter. Time to wake up.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here with you.
Shake your head, nod your head. It's time to go. See what they did to you? Pull yourself together. Get out of prison. Kill the jailer. Fight for your freedom. The jailer is the key. Kill him, and you'll be free.
And here we go! Alright, so, first things first, I would just like to say that Furi is a little bit of a dialogue-heavy game. So there will be points where I interject, and points where I won't. I mostly will be doing the interjecting during the boss fights, but as far as these like walking scenes go, and these intermittent scenes and cutscenes, I'm not going to be talking. So...
Every step you've taken from that cell, I'll make you regret. You listen to me, and you listen good. You'll never escape. I swear I'll put you right back in your cell. There's an easy way and a hard way. You choose. Excellent choice.
And so begins the very first boss fight, the Chain. This is basically the tutorial boss fight, so you can kind of get a feel for how this game works. But what is Furi exactly? Well, it's almost strictly an action game. The entire game is centered around boss fights, of which there are... Well, actually, I won't spoil how many there are, but there's a few, and that's really all the game is. It's just the boss fights, which I really do like that style. I am a big fan of games like Shadow of the Colossus. However, I would not in any way consider this like Shadow of the Colossus, aside from the boss emphasis. That's like the only comparison I would make. So, it's pretty simple, but I guess it's simple in theory and on paper, but in execution, Furi is not a very easy game. In fact, it's actually quite difficult. I'm going to play this on normal mode, which, you know, in and of itself is pretty difficult. There is one mode easier than this, but there is also a mode harder than this as well, and that mode is, oh boy, pretty much impossible, I'd be willing to say. In fact, I can't even beat all of the bosses in normal, but I'm going to be doing it anyway for the sake of this playthrough, hopefully. So yeah, it's strictly a reactionary action game where you have to time different moves and whatnot. So right here, it's teaching you all the different kinds of moves. There's the basic slash, which you just do by pressing square. There's the charged up slash, which in reality, aside from in this fight, you can only do when there's an opening. Lots of bosses will counter your movements, they'll block your movements and whatnot, and yeah, you can't just, you know, easily charge up and hit them for extra damage all the time. Now, it's kind of a mix between hack and slash combat and also, as you can see here, kind of a bullet hell style of combat, and you'll get a good mix of both from every boss. There's only a couple exceptions that definitely focus on the bullet hell aspect more, and then there's also a couple that definitely focus on the actual action combat more, but we'll get into those as we get to them. This guy is a good balance between the two, I would say, because again, he's the tutorial boss. There's also a parrying option, which you're going to want to use often. Now, you can parry both direct hits and bullets. I am the worst at parrying projectiles, so I will not be doing that at all because I don't want to risk taking hits for it. I would rather just dodge around them. But when it comes to taking damage from the enemies and from the bosses and whatnot, parrying is your best option because not only can you possibly, if you time it just right, actually counterattack the boss and do damage to them, but on top of that, you also get some health back for doing so. And you want to string together combos and whatnot. Also, it's sometimes your only method of dodging, as it is a lot, or I guess not taking damage, because it's a lot harder to, it's a lot harder to parry projectiles and a lot easier to dodge them, and then vice versa for direct hits, I would say. So, yeah, again, purely reactionary. There are a couple things to take note of. As you can see, these green little orbs are giving me health. I can only get those from shooting his green projectiles. This applies to all bosses in the game. And there's a good counter right there. Now, let's take a look at the top of the screen real quick. So the top left is my health bar and lives, and then the top right is his health bar and phases. So, up in the top left, you can see how many hits I'm allowed to take. Certain hits are different for every boss. You don't always gain a full bar of health back for every single parry, obviously. And if my health goes all the way down before I complete a phase, I lose a life and that phase starts over. If I kill him or take down his phase before it, I get all of my health back and a life back if I've lost one. If I have not, if I lose all 3 lives on the same phase, it's over, basically. However, those lives can accumulate into the next phase. Like, let's say you're on, like, phase 3 and you lose 2 lives. You will only be back to 2 lives after you finish off his phase. Now, he has a blue health bar and an orange health bar. This is not 100% the rule, but it is how the game works for the most part. Every boss has 2 segments to their phase. An open arena phase, I guess you could like almost say it's the Star Fox all range mode, and then you have this super close-up version, right, like you can see right here, where I can only fight within the circle. This is typically a lot more action-oriented. Typically, the bullet hell stuff is saved for the open arenas. On top of that, not every boss has a set number of phases. However, sometimes their phases are definitely a lot longer. There will be bosses that will only have like 3 phases, but each of their phases are excruciatingly long as compared to other fights. This guy has relatively short phases. On top of that, the final phase is always a bullet hell segment that involves you doing minimal to no damage whatsoever to the boss, but trying to survive a really ridiculous amount of bullets he sends your way or she sends your way that are very, very difficult, because yes, there are male and female bosses, and they're all very interesting. So I can't wait to get into all of them, because there's actually a lot of interesting lore to this game. Learning about our character in this world that we're kind of in at the moment. So we play as some stranger, that this guy right here, who is our jailer, I suppose. He's called the Chain because he is literally the one that holds you hostage. He's basically called you a weapon. Now, he definitely gives off the impression that he's the bad guy, but that is not a universal rule. Definitely not. This is one of those games that's going to make you question what you're doing, and that was a bad dodge right there. That aside, he does have a little bit of a point, and you're going to learn more as you go, obviously, about your character, but right now this is kind of just focused on the mechanics. We'll get into more story as we go through each of the boss fights. So here's the last phase. This is going to be a bullet hell strictly. Now, typically, most of the bullet hell phases are just one phase. There's no close quarter segment afterwards, but that, again, is not 100% the rule. Always expect the worst with this game when it comes to what it's going to throw at you, but prepare, or I guess I wouldn't say expect, I'd say prepare for the worst. Don't expect it. Because you never really know what the game's going to throw at you, which is interesting. It really is. This game is, it really does, it keeps you on your toes, is what the whole point of the game is. It is a very challenging game, and I'm not really one into these kinds of games. Like, hack and slashes I'm okay with, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I'm also not the biggest fan of, you know, super action-oriented games either, or reactionary games. Like, this game gives me a lot of vibes like a game, like games such as Dark Souls, because it is about timing. However, this game is a lot less about being patient than a game like that is. You do have to have some form of patience and restraint, obviously, as you can see here for this last fight, because I couldn't hit him for a while. But that's, again, not universally the rule. This game has a lot of things about it that are exceptional, in the literal sense of the word. And that was it for the first fight. Very simple, but then again, I have played through this game before, so kind of knew what to expect. It was definitely not as easy the first time. But yeah, that is the chain.
You will be broken. You will go back to yourself.
Bravo! Excellent! What a thrill! Not your first time, right? Anyway, the good news, we're one step closer to freedom. The bad news, there's more out there waiting for us. But don't worry, I know them. I can help. Believe me, what's waiting at the end of all this is so worth the trouble. You and me, we're in the same boat now. Now let's get the hell out of here. Way down there lies a free world. A world of peace and light, where you're free as the wind. And you know what? We're going to get there.
Eventually. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.